Welcome to the GSMC Business News Podcast, the show dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning business, technology, and the stock market. Get a head start on the day as we keep you updated on the latest goings-on Wall Street, money, jobs, and technology. If you're looking for a podcast to keep you informed and ahead of the game in business, the GSMC Business News Podcast has you covered.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC Business News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Moriah, and today we're going to be getting into the fashion industry. We're going to talk about some of its history, some of the legacy that it's left in years past, as far as business-wise. And, you know, a lot of times the change of the industry is what shifts the business in the industry. So I think the fashion industry is always an interesting industry to monitor, to do case studies of, because it's one of those industries where it's truly ran by the people. There are obviously your leaders and your experts and those who set the trends, because that's what the leaders in industries do. They set trends and the public follows suit. I would say with the fashion industry, it's a quicker change of events, right? So there's quicker turnarounds. You might think, something did really well and that product or that, that style or that outfit just doesn't resonate, with the public as much. So the turnaround time on seeing, if the people like it or not is very quick. And then some, type of styles of clothing, it tends to make its mark over time. So you might be selling leather handbags, and those handbags are pretty good leather. But then customers start to see, on average, around year 5, the bag begins to deteriorate. So it's not really a bag that's considered vintage. It's not something that can be passed down from mother to daughter, from father to son, or however you get things passed down in your family. It's one of those, those pieces that may be expensive, but it just doesn't last very long. So, that's something that takes time, and it takes, a lot of studying. It takes quality assurance, more so than those quicker, cheaper items that, basically you put them out, it pops and then it fizzles really quick. So a lot of things in the industry fluctuate. There are times where maybe haute couture is not in style. Maybe streetwear takes over for a little bit. A lot of things are done by decades. And that really will determine how much money can be made in the industry. Now, obviously, the fashion industry has, at its capacity, has been going on for, I want to say, since the early 1900s, probably around before, a little bit before then, as far as manufactured, like nationwide, globally, where we don't have to get fitted for these clothes anymore. We can order this. It can be sent in bulk, uniform style clothing, things of that nature. So that's what I mean when I say the industry. It's not when clothes were invented or when people began to buy and sell clothes. It's the widespread manufacturing of clothing. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Some predictions. A lot of things can be predicted in the industry, especially when you're looking at maybe 10 to 15 year averages. When you're a kid, those averages just seem so long. I remember taking up business in high school, and a lot of times my teachers would give predictions on, different business trends in years to come. And I had one teacher in particular who did some type of workout class. I want to say it was spin class. And, she gave some predictions on how she believed the industry would grow over time, and how she believed that health and wellness were going to take over very soon, and that she had her foot in the door because she saw a need in the market. And she filled that need in her area. And then I can say the older I got, that's the more, the more I saw the health a lot of health kicks were happening, and a lot of individuals were looking to get more fit, get more healthy. You saw those who are vegan really begin to grow their efforts and their movements on a larger scale. And that made a lot of people want to get more interested in working out and getting more fit. I would say in that industry had begun to grow. If you listen to the last episode, we talked about the recreational industry. And in that industry, there was a lot of growth. A lot more people are looking to get fit and active. And, you know, my teacher in high school gave that to me, I want to say around 15 years ago. We'll leave it at that. So knowing that trends have things get predicted in this industry, similar to any other industry, I would say the difference is in what the people want. For the fashion industry is what really, really determines how that's going to go. So in this industry, I would say it's just slightly different on how it's ran. Not that it's largely different, but it's very unique to itself. So we'll be talking about that today. And if you're like me, you're always looking for new streams of income. You might be interested in getting your foot in the fashion industry door. So we'll talk about how to start your own brand. And then as always, we'll get into our hometown heroes. I feel like I have some good picks for today. I'm really excited to share these hometown heroes. So stay locked in for the full episode. It's going to be good. All right, so let's go ahead and get more into that the fashion industry and, you know, more so what it entails and how it started and things of that nature. So the fashion industry, again, that's that manufactured goods. So it's the production of it is much higher, much quicker, and so therefore a lot more hands are needed in the pot to get everything out to the people, right? So it's based on the functions of individuals. That's the difference. Normally things are based on, you know, the demand and things of that nature, but in this industry now, it's more so the individuals involved that that define the industry in itself. So the people, more so the models, you have your seamstresses, you have, I want to say, you know, your embroiders. There's a few individuals in my city who are getting into that. They've ordered their factory equipment. You know, they have little studios where they can get started. The print and embroidery business right now, I would say, is booming. My sister-in-law does print as well. So shout out to Crafting with Tori. You know, those little guys in those little markets all around, in every major city, even the rural cities, you'll see some cute little quaint boutiques. Those individuals are all of the people who make up the fashion industry. Without them, we really wouldn't have so many options for clothing, right? You can go online right now, and you can type in black hoodie, and you'll get pages and pages on Google or Yahoo or, you know, whichever search engine you use, with hundreds of styles of hoodies. You can get pullover, you can get zip up, you can get button down hoodies. There are hoodies with missing shoulders. There are hoodies where you can zip the shoulder down. So many different styles. Those are those individuals and those brands doing all of their business functions. So when you do your website, you want to do your SEO, you know, those keywords that when people type in a black hoodie, your brand is one of the brands that come up first. They are all working and moving. All these different pieces help the fashion and apparel industry. So, you know, you have your functional clothing, like those hoodies and those sweatpants. And then you have your high fashion, which are, you know, it incorporates its own style. I feel like fashion is the only place in the world where you can be a bit prejudiced, right? So you can like a certain style of clothing and someone else doesn't like that style of clothing. And you might judge them a little bit, like, why are they dressed that way? And a lot of it has become a social norm. So, you know, if you're working at a firehouse, you wouldn't come dressed in the wrong gear. You might not even be able to work at some places if you come in the wrong clothing, right? So you can sort of judge individuals in fashion, but it's also seen through your own eyes. So your sense of high fashion as opposed to apparel, it can differ very drastically from the next person. and you sort of base your judgments. You kind of hang around people who, a lot of athletes tend to hang around each other. They tend to dress alike. You ever notice, like, you see a group of individuals, no matter the industry they're in, they kind of have something in style. They might have similar style sneakers. They might all wear hats, or, a few in the crew, they have a thing for jackets. Fashion really brings people together. And that's another part of the industry I think that's very cool that they're able to do. You're able to be yourself, and you're able to look around and say what you don't like and what you do like. And no one really judges you for it, for picking your own style. They might not like what you wear, but you're free to be your own individual self. And you kind of look around and you kind of see how everyone else is selling their products, and you see how everyone else is promoting their products, and they might promote differently. In business, it can be very competitive. And so you might take a jab at some of the big guys, if you're a smaller scale store, and just let everyone know, they're doing it on that scale, but I'm doing it on this scale. All of these individuals in the industry, that's how they move. That's how they operate. If you know anyone in the fashion industry, they have a keen insight on how you should look and how you should dress, and what's the right look and what's not the right look. A lot of that involves the press. So now you're getting into the media industry, and, a lot of industries tend to overlap each other. You have your salespeople, there's publicists, there's so many individuals who are involved in the industry, and they're all anticipating the needs of the consumer. So it's about fulfilling a need. It's about, giving a basis of desire, and style, and it reflects the changes of the consumers. So the industry is really about the give and the take. I think that's why I like to say that it's very unique in the way that it operates. A lot of industries, for example, in the tech industry, the tech leaders give the products, and it's on the market for however many years, and then a new tech leader will come in and see what that previous tech leader could have expanded upon, and then they'll create a better version of what we already know. So, there was always the fatback TVs, but now, I don't know anyone besides some older individuals who still have a fatback in their home. Now you have the flat screen, right? So that's what we call the TV with the, the big stereo hooked up to the bottom, and if you pull the back of the TV off, it's this big board. Now we don't need all of that. Things have changed. Things have grown, and they have evolutionized. And in the fashion industry, it's slightly different. Things of the past can come back. So I remember at one point, the flowers in your hair, and the peace signs, and the fringes on your jackets, and all of that kind of stuff came back out. And it was at one point, it looked like we were back in the 60s, like at a peace rally or something, the hippie movement, as a lot of people like to call it. Things in the industry can go back and forth, and it really depends on what the people want. A lot of people, I remember at one point on Twitter, I know I get a lot of news from Twitter, they were saying how they want things to go back to the 90s, and they love the 90s and the 90s music and the 90s vibes, the 90s culture. A lot of young individuals always say how some people in the 90s were just naturally beautiful and things of that nature. So you get this desire from the people. The industry leaders hear that, and they begin to give a new version of what the people are longing for, that nostalgia piece. So a lot of the times you'll see in the industry, they're more so going for your desire and looking to see what you like. When you dress good, you feel good. So the industry really leans heavily upon the people, and the people lean heavily upon the industry to give them what they want. So you'll see that give and that take. It's a lot of adaptation. It's a lot of evolution. It's going right now, I would say a lot of the clothing that I've seen being sold is going more so for the sportswear. So more like, the streetwear. One of the industries, I would say, one of the business, that I've been paying attention to is Fashion Nova. They give so many options. You can get your whole spring, summer, fall, winter collection in one try on certain sites like that, because they just give you everything that you need. A lot of people travel. And that also caters to different parts of the world. So while it's cold here, it might be warm somewhere else. And that site is all encompassing and it gives everyone what they need. So a lot of times in the industry, they're, again, depending on the customer's needs, but the customers are depending on them to have the right infrastructure to get everything down. So you have your consultants and you have your research agencies and your advertisers, and again, that media. So the media pays attention. They have scouts. That I remember I went to apply for this one job. It just wasn't the job for me, but there was one opportunity where I would be a brand's social media scout. So I would go through, look up certain hashtags, basically see what the people are talking about. So all of that encompasses a lot of different industries. You have your mass production that began around, I want to say the mid 19th century. So clothing being manufactured on a large scale, that's around the time that happened. And then it became, there were war that happened. So then a lot of efforts went to the war, making uniforms and boots and things of that nature. And then from there, once, wartime kind of settled down for a bit in certain places, you begin to see, individuals become entrepreneurs. So, okay, I learned this cool, skill during that time, and now I'm going to make my own business where we make suits or we tailor dresses or we make shoes. And then you begin to start seeing the celebrity stylists. And then from there, now you have, anyone can make a brand at this point. If you have the right information, we're going to give some tips today. And you have, the right backing, you're able to give influence, because you do have to influence. You have to have your ear to the street. I would always say, keep your ear to the street if you're in this industry. And if you're able to do that, then you should be able to get your own brand started. So it went from more so, a need for the manufacturing to a desire to be the manufacturer to now everyone in their own individualistic way can become someone in the fashion industry. And I think that's really cool, because fashion is normally about the individual. A lot of people are looking for exclusive pieces. That's some new things that we're seeing in the industry. So we're going to take a quick break. And then when we come back, we'll continue the discussion about the new trends that we're seeing, how people can get their own brand started, and some local people who are getting it done right now. All right, so stay locked in. We'll be right back.
Are you looking for a podcast that gives you all of the latest news from the world of finance? Then check out the GSMC Financial News Podcast. We'll delve into the ups and downs of the stock market, changes in the economy, and news from the world of real estate and technology. From breaking news on the New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, or the overseas market, to updates on the bond market, if there's money to be made, we'll cover it on the GSMC Financial News Podcast.
Back, and again today we're talking about the fashion industry, how it's changing over time, how we're beginning to see the rise in the entrepreneur again in the industry. So there was a boost, I want to say around the 50s and the 60s, and then going into the 70s and particularly the 80s, you begin to see the rise in the celebrity entrepreneur. So for example, in hip hop culture, a lot of artists and rappers and, beatboxers and dancers, DJs, they will wear certain clothing. And if the streets basically thought it was hot, that's what those designers would continue to make and continue to sell. And then you begin to have your different types of clothing. So maybe what looked cool for streetwear, or what was now deemed as streetwear, was very different from the high fashion side of the brands, and what those who looked for simple but elegant classic pieces were going for. So you begin to see some different layered approaches to how some fashion houses were creating their clothing. And again, now that, we're in the 2000s, and we're in 2021 at this point. A lot of individuals are starting to make their own brands and make their own names and their own waves in the industry. You're beginning to see a lot of changes. Garments and clothing aren't made the same anymore. So whereas before you might be selling a limited number of pieces because it may be you and maybe one other hand that's creating the clothes, at this point it's not the same. So now you can, if you have some good mentors in the industry, or if you do your due diligence and your research, you'll be able to locate different vendors in other countries who may be able to do the clothing the way you like it at a higher, capacity and in a quicker time frame. So you might have a booming business and you have 100 sales a day, and you're just kind of getting started and you're already at 100 sales per day. On an average of maybe 4 days out of the week, you can hit 100 at a time. You're not at the place anymore where you can sew all these items yourself. At this point, you need to outsource. And so a lot of brands are looking for the cheapest route to do it, keeping costs close to zero as possible and keeping profits as high as they can go, right? That's the plan. I think that's what everyone should strive for. And that's what a lot of businesses are doing. So they're looking for overseas manufacturers. I was able to locate some within my country. I like to keep things at home. So I try the best of my ability to help brands that I'm assisting find manufacturers within the United States. It's been tricky doing it and, trying to find cruelty-free, basically, environments where they're treating their employees great. They're receiving good pay, good benefits. So that gets into the business ethics portion of the industry. I'm sure you've been made aware that a lot of brands have been caught up in the news because of the fact that they've been accused of using facilities where they pay their workers, in some instances less than $1, and they're working all day and there's no breaks. That's why child labor laws got put into place, because in other industries, children were being used to produce items, and, that's considered cruelty. In my book particularly, that's my personal opinion. So that's why this industry I like it, because of the fact that it gives everyone the opportunity to move the way that they want to, and the people will decide for sure if they like it or not. One thing that I've learned being in business is that people are very fickle, and what they like now, they may not like in the future. So always be mindful of that when getting involved in this industry. That's something that a lot of leaders are paying attention to, especially now in the social media era. Everyone's able to give their opinion. So just like I said, in my opinion, the child labor outside of the law, I think it's just out of control. It doesn't make any sense. And even when the law does get implemented, you'll find a lot of individuals try to get around these laws and try to find loopholes, because again, a lot of people are looking to keep their costs as close to zero. So I could get on Twitter or Instagram or Facebook right now and say all of that, and I could spark up a big debate, and a lot of individuals could have their opinions, and then the group begins to form an opinion. As a fashion expert or a leader in the industry, I'm going to case study this brand. So whoever, Moriah is talking about on Twitter and how they're using child labor and they're not following the law, I'm going to follow that thread, and I'm going to follow these businesses, and I'm going to either make sure I don't do what they're doing. If I am doing what they're doing, I'm going to try to find a way to get around it. So there's a lot of the rabbit hole can go very deep. So in this industry, with the technology that we have, with the intel that we have, it's very easy to be called out. I think it's a great thing, because those who are moving in a very unethical way are getting called out a lot faster, a lot quicker. There is what's called cancel culture. The fashion industry deals with it very much because, if anyone finds out that your brand is doing something unethical, the wiggle room that may have been in the past. You know, you could do a great press release and you apologize and you move forward. It's not cutting it the same like it used to. Now you can get canceled, and my advice would be to maybe rebrand and come out with something very, very different, because, you know, the social media, I like to call them the social media warriors, they are not very easy to deal with. And in this industry, that is something new. Before, you might have had write-ins and you might have had people calling the radio stations and complaining and things like that. Now everyone has a platform. Everyone has a voice. Normally major brands, you know, they have their names online. So you can type into your social media page a certain business and pull them up and see what they're posting about. It's just like I can pull up the brand just to see what they have on their page. I can tag them and, you know, give bad reviews, and people will look at that, and sometimes negative news just grabs the attention of the reader quicker than good news. So in this industry, that's something that I would say is one of the biggest influences. It's the social media and what people like and what people don't like, and all of the opinions that you can get at one time. That's definitely influencing how designers are dealing directly with their customers. There's also kind of shifting the topic from the ethics of it all to how things are being manufactured. So normally, you know, you had your magazine editors. Now, don't get me wrong, magazine in fashion, it's still very important for a lot of shoppers, a lot of those in the industry. I know a few models who still get their favorite magazines with the different fashion and all the updates with the new seasons and what to buy. But a lot of them are becoming digital. A lot of things are going online. And normally, you know, they would deal with celebrities. So you might have a famous celebrity do their shoot. So you want to get into the models. Who can you afford to model your clothing? Because that also helps with the influence. And now that we're in an influencer culture, finding the right people to help promote the brand is normally what helps the business to grow. So before, again, you know, the fashion house could put it out to a certain magazine or to a certain station. They have a commercial or an ad on the radio. Now, people aren't really looking for this. In particular, it's the younger generation. They're not really looking for magazines to get their news. They're not looking for a TV commercial to see some new clothing that's hot. Now they want to go right to their Google search. They want to go right to their Instagram search, for example. They want to type in a certain item. They saw a young celebrity wear this certain item, or they saw an influencer in their city wear a certain item, and now they're looking for it. They may not be able to afford that piece, so they'll go to their local seamstress or their local clothing designer and see if they can replicate the piece. And now that designer has now replicated something, made it maybe a little bit their own, and they've changed it around, and now they're beginning to sell their piece. So now you have new competition. So it's very good. You see how quickly it went from being the major fashion houses to now there are a lot of individuals who can get involved with the industry, and they can come up with their own items, and they can sell it in similar ways to the big brands. And the big brands are now competing with the little guys. So before, again, it used to be the big guys, and now it's those, if you ask those CEOs, I'm sure they'll tell you that they're not really concerned about the one who's already established. You know, you already have your legs, and, you know, you already have your loyal customers. It's more so the new guys in the industry who can come in with a hot brand or a hot item or a hot piece that resonates with the younger generation, who normally tends to party more, go out more, travel to different places more. So they're looking for different clothing. They're looking for more pieces. I'm working on it, but if you're anything like me, whenever you travel, you do want to get something new. It doesn't have to be a whole wardrobe, but you might get some new, a new swimsuit, a new outfit for dinner, wherever you're going, wherever you're traveling to. So a lot of individuals are looking for quick pieces, quick turnaround, something hot, something that no one has before. They're looking for a lot of individual looking pieces. So that's something that the industry has to keep up with. And again, it's data driven. So the consumers, they're wearing whatever they used to wear, whatever the designers would create, but now they're more so again looking for their own specific piece. They want to create a shirt that comes all the way down. It covers their rear end. Some don't want their rear end covered, but they wanted to connect to a dress, and they want pockets, and they want flares and zippers and buckles. You might have a very simple customer. You might have a very gaudy customer, and you as the fashion industry expert or the leader has to meet the need of those customers. So now you're just seeing more people saying what they want and how they want it, and they're expecting you as the brand to meet that need because they trust you as a leader in the industry. So that's something that is definitely changing over time. And again, a lot of stores, they're using data to see what the rise and the fall in the trend is going to be. So, now you can look into analytics, and you don't have to actually have so many scouts going around. And, there used to be secret shoppers and things of that nature. Now you can just check your KPIs, check your analytics. You can look up different case studies. A lot of businesses do different studies and industry reports, and you can purchase that information. And you can look to see, okay, based off of the trends, this is how we should market our brand. This is how we should sell this certain item. You might be looking at your political movements and things of that nature. So you might be a brand that feels strongly about recycling and going green. And so you might have a special hat or a special bag that's, made from recycled items and things of that nature. And those donations can go to a certain organization. So a lot more of political, I would say, and more so movement brands are being created just to kind of touch bases with the people and kind of get that community feel. So it's going from those big houses, those big fashion houses, to more smaller scale community-led brands, which I think is cool. I have a few items in my closet that were made from organizations who donate to other organizations. Pretty cool stuff. So the fashion industry is definitely opening up to bigger avenues and collaborating more with other industries. So we're going to take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to get into how you can start maybe your own fashion brand, and then we'll talk about some hometown heroes. So stay locked in. We'll be right back.
Do you work in the world of marketing and advertising? Are you a media buyer or the owner of an agency? Have you been looking for a podcast to help stay on top of all the goings on of those worlds? The GSMC Marketing News Podcast is dedicated to keeping you up to date on all things concerning marketing and advertising. Get the latest marketing news, from what major businesses have planned for the coming year to the newest trends in advertising, from podcasts, digital and streaming, to the old standbys of radio, television, and billboards. The GSMC Marketing News Podcast has you covered, whether you're a marketing agent or a business trying to expand your brand.
Welcome back again. Today we're talking about the fashion industry. We've discussed the history of it around the mid 19th century when the fashion clothing and different pieces had to be manufactured in a much more larger scale, especially going towards the war efforts, creating uniforms, creating, the nurse attire, boots, different things like that. And how those big fashion houses had to begin shifting their task and shifting their efforts to help with that. And how after a while, that became a more so entrepreneurial endeavor of creating maybe a seamstress business or, the fashion media business and fashion magazines. Like in 1910, there was a women's wear fashion magazine created because women tend to be the highest shoppers the biggest shoppers, I should say. Especially the spenders. I know a lot of women who love to shop. They have fun shopping. It's therapeutic. Not to say that the guys don't like shopping as well, but women tend to enjoy that experience. It's more like therapeutic for a woman to go shopping. So women are definitely the biggest spenders in that industry, and a lot of brands begin to focus and shift around those trends and those needs and see the demand. So it became more so entrepreneurial. Okay, I see this need in my community. Let me create my local suit tailor. Let me create my local dry cleaner, because I know that the beauty fashion store is down the street. So I'll create the dry cleaner so they can go down there and go shopping, and then they can come and shop with me as the dry cleaner. I'm going to make sure all those fancy high fashion pieces are restored back to new. So a lot of industries begin to pop up. And then we begin to see the celebrity designers, and you have your Vera Wangs, and you have those different names in the industry creating different pieces. You have your hip hop artists and your rap artists and your street artists and things of that nature wearing certain brands, creating their own brands. You had, I want to say there around my time, there was Rockaware, and Sean Combs had his line, and there was Baby Fat and things of that nature. And then you had your other, your couture. You had Chanel, and you have some other designers as well. You have Balenciaga and some of the higher names. You have your Ralph Lauren's and things of that nature. So those big names that begin to stick out and to begin to take on decade after decade of designs. And then people, there's some individuals who have vintage Gucci bags and vintage Chanel bags and vintage Louis Vuitton bags and things of that nature. So a lot of these names have been out so long that now their pieces are vintage. So now, in 20 years, some of these new brands that are popping up, their pieces may be considered vintage as well. And you'll begin to see how, I believe more and more brands are going to continue to rise in the fashion industry. Again, it's becoming much more easier than it was in the past to create your own brand. If you're paying attention to, the future of the industry, you're seeing how fashion is needed. Clothing at its basis is needed. You need clothes. You can't go into stores without them. So I think the fashion industry is going to continue to rise. Everyone needs clothing. Everyone needs shoes. Everyone needs undergarments. If you work certain jobs, you need a hat. You might play a certain sport where you need headgear, things like that. You might need athletic apparel. Depending on what you do. So I think the industry is going to continue to sustain itself because it is a needed industry in the world. And again, things are getting very digital, so you want to pay attention to that as well. Things are becoming much more simple. And again, the Fashion Nova example where they give everything at one time. You can get your bathing suit. You could probably find a coat, some boots, jeans, anything you need at one time. You can go right on there and you can get it all. That's just one example. There's a few other examples. You have your stores like your Walmarts and your Targets who have their clothing departments, and you can get clothes from them as well. At one point, there was no grocery store that had clothing in it, but now you do have your super Walmarts and your super Targets where they have home goods, and they have, those individuals, they make those pillows and those curtains and things like that. Then you have your clothes in the next department, and then right next to it, you have food. So this industry is definitely something that's needed. Everyone's always going to be needing clothes, so it might be something that you want to get into. So I'm sure by this point you're thinking, okay, so you told me about the industry, you let me know some new trends that might be coming up. How do I start my own? I'm ready to start my own business. I love fashion. I used to sew as a kid. If you were anything like me, you were sneaking in your mom's sewing kit and figuring out different ways to make different items. I always had a knack for sewing. I just always thought it was pretty therapeutic. I think it's the drill on the inside of it, the needle and everything like that. The whole machine is just very calming. And then seeing something going from just a roll of fabric to a garment or a hat or a headband. I helped run a brand called Lady M's Fashion Bands, where they make custom hair accessories, and it's mainly dependent on being soft and gentle on fine to coarse hair. So hair care is definitely important to this brand. And seeing the pieces go from start to finish, where we're picking out fabrics and we're looking at different manufacturers, and then the items get sewn. Everything is made in-house at this point in time. Business efforts can just support the demand. And seeing it go, so I'm able to see the behind the scenes at literally I'm in the studio sometimes and I can see it go from a few cut up pieces to a full, maybe a hair bonnet, and then being able to see it go from, production to getting the notification that it's been delivered to the customer, and then being tagged on social media and seeing how much the customers love their items. It's a very fulfilling thing. So the business can be fulfilling depending on which avenue you go into. At first I was heavily involved. Now I'm able to more so take my hands off because business is growing. I'm able to do more of the logistics in the background. So that's more so my strong area. I'm not more so the fashion person. I'm more so, I'll chill in the back and let everyone else do, what they do. And I'll work on the paperwork, get the manufacturers in place, figuring out how we're going to, promote and the advertising and things like that. So there's a lot of different areas in the business that you can get involved in. So you want to find your niche. You definitely want to find your niche. And then that's where, where you want to hop in. So identifying the need in the market is very important. If you don't find the need, if there's not a need, you might find yourself riding the trend or riding the wave instead of actually putting, a solid anchor in that pool and creating, your own island in that area, right? You want to find the need and you want to dive into it. And then from there, you want to always, like we always harp on, you want to get your business plan going. A lot of people think they don't need a business plan. Because maybe they feel, in my experience, they feel like, they'll just write it down as they go. But being able to really sit back and see the future, those predictions. Where do you see the brand going in a few years? How long do you see it lasting? Are you looking to get in this business forever? Is this your lifelong desire and all you want to do is make clothes? All you want to do is promote models. All you want to do is sew. All you want to do is embroider. What's your step by step? How are you going to fund the business? Because fabric is not cheap, and there are special textiles and special designs, and there are sketch artists who can help you, and they are charging quality prices, I'll say, because they do very quality work. So you need to know what type of clothing are you trying to sell. You're trying to sell specially blended and woven cottons, or are you just trying to sell a regular t-shirt with some print on it? There's nothing wrong with either one, but you just want to find your need and you want to put all of that into the business plan. There's different ways to structure the clothing brand. So it's going to be e-commerce, Is it going to be strictly online? Are you going to drop ship? Are you actually making the clothes yourself? Is it a handmade endeavor? Is this, what is exactly are you doing? All of that should be in the business plan. We should be able to see the anatomy of the business in the plan. So you always want to have that, especially in fashion. If you're looking for investors, clothing it's similar to, I would say, the entertainment industry. You can either hit or miss. And influence is definitely a portion. Investors, whether they are investing money or they're investing. Some I've seen in one case where an investor was giving a portion of some financial backing, but they were also giving up some of their clients, so that it was more so like a merger, and that investor invested clients and funding. So putting all that into the business plan is very important. You need to know how you're going to eat, right? You need to know how the lights are going to stay on. So I say all that to say, make sure your business plan is good, pristine, and make sure you're updating it on, on a regular basis. I would say I do mine's on a bi-quarterly base. And sometimes you might be able to do it on an annual basis. So you look over your year and then update it as such. So depending on your need, make sure you're updating that plan. And then after you get all the logistics out the way, after you get your permit out the way and you've found a manufacturer, this is when you want to get into the fun part, I would say, which is sketching the designs, So you found the manufacturer, you think they can do good. If you're a fashion artist, I'm sure you have a bunch of sketches, so you're already prepared in that area. If you're looking to get into more basic things, you might have a simple logo idea or a simple catchphrase that you might want to put on. You might not even have a logo yet. You might just have a catchphrase that you want to put on a shirt or put on a hat, and you want to sell that. Then, you want to get into the designing and choosing your name and choosing the logo, your market profile. I think in a lot of businesses, your logo doesn't have to be perfect. I would say in any business, your logo doesn't have to start off perfect. I think with clothing, though, you definitely want to take your time doing the logo, because if people see your logo and they don't like it, they're not going to wear it. I've noticed that. I've did my own research. It's just kind of like, if it's cheesy, sometimes it's just not going to hit. Now, sometimes cheesy can be good. It's so cheesy that it actually works. But in my experience with clothing, you just want to be mindful of that logo, of the text. If you're not so good at that type of thing, you might want to hire some help. You might want to start building a team. That's coming up next. So you want to build a team because, doing clothing by yourself is not easy. And if, say, for example, you have a really great logo, you have a really great design, and you sell out so fast that you can't keep up with the demand. So that's why you want to do that business plan. You want to have that team in place, because the business plan will discuss the team members. They'll discuss, what you're looking to spend your money on as far as manufacturing. You'll put your logo in there. You'll do some market analysis and put that in there as well. So that business plan definitely covers a lot of the steps in starting your own fashion brand. You want to choose a price point. So you want to survey the industry. If you're selling luxury hats, just, your typical winter hats, but they're luxury. You want to look into that specific market. See how much they're selling theirs for. You never know. It might be close to what you think, yours should go for. It could be a little bit higher. So you just want to be mindful of that and pay attention to all of that. And then from there, you want to grow that brand awareness. So you might look at some Instagram influencers, there's a few other sites where you can get some influencers to promote your brand and wear the items. I know a few people on Twitter who do that as well. They promote, their tweets are always going viral, and under the viral tweets, they're constantly promoting those who they are influencers for. So you want to look into that. And then as you begin to grow, you want to, again, think about those investors. Sometimes investors don't want to invest in the beginning because they're not sure about your proof of concept. Can you really sell these items? And if you have proven that, then from there, they'll begin to look into, getting you some more money, some more financial backing, so you can reach out to some better manufacturers and things of that nature. And consistency is key. Always remember that consistency is key, and keep up to date. Be in the know with your industry. All right. So those are just my few little tips on getting started in the industry. We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to get into my favorite segment of the show, the Hometown Heroes. All right. Stay locked in. We'll be right back.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
Back, and again today we're talking about the fashion industry. We discussed how it has fared over time, how it began helping out with war efforts in some instances and meeting the demand of the highest spenders, which are the lady shoppers out there, and how the fashion houses went from being just major fashion houses to celebrity stylists and celebrity fashion designers. And then how now that automation and technology have gotten involved with, I want to say, every industry across the board, you're beginning to see the new little guy pop up where you can be an unknown person and you can become known very quickly if your brand is hot. I know there was one brand in Philadelphia by the name of Milano, and she started off as a business student. From my research, and then from there she had a great idea for a clothing line, and she was able to get the line on some pretty famous people, and from there the brand just began to grow. There was another individual by the name of William. He has Banny Perot, and similar to that, he started off as a media student, and from there he used that influence and that media background and knowledge to really grow the brand and push it in his community, and from there it began to grow. And he was also able to get some celebrity artists to wear his clothes, and they were promoting it, being those type of influencers like we discussed. So there's many ways for the little guy, or I would say the underdog, to really make a name in this industry. There's been a few examples of that all around the world. If you look in any major city, mainly, and you take a look at the big name fashion designers in that city, they all didn't start off in these big fashion houses, right? They had a passion for the field. They had a love for design. They had a love to see people looking good because they understand the do's and the don'ts of fashion and what's good and what's not. And they were able to really make a name for themselves and grow the brand, and then begin to collaborate with other industry leaders, i.e. the press, again, those influencers, or those, I would say, the new age models. So you don't have to do the runway fashion anymore. In particular, because of the pandemic at this point, I've been to a few fashion shows in years prior to the pandemic. Always had a good time, but now that the pandemic is here, we saw some digital fashion shows go on, which I thought was amazing. So the industry is definitely changing, and some brands are being able to keep up with the demand. So let's get into some hometown heroes. First on the list is Jenny Lee, and she is the owner who launched Comfy. I want to say she launched it almost a year before the pandemic, and she had the idea to sell luxury socks. Socks is nothing new. All she did was really reinvent the wheel. So if you're out there and you're looking to start a brand, but you don't think your idea is one that will last, I say look around you, because a lot of people are taking those same thoughts and those same ideas, and they're making something out of themselves, right? So I love a good pair of socks, so luxury socks is cool with me. So shout out to Jenny Lee, right? So that was her intent. I'm not sure if you've been noticing the trend in the industry, which is to have socks with different type of shoes. A lot of brands are collaborating with some of those, those fashion picks. And that was her intent. So if I'm sure you've seen maybe a pair of high heels with some socks before, that's what she was going for with the luxury brand. But then the pandemic hit and it interrupted a few industries, as we've seen. And because of that, she decided to shift her efforts, and she created the Everyday Sock. And the Everyday Sock is made of organic cotton. It's ankle length, and they can be worn indoors, outdoors, with shoes, without shoes, however you decide to rock that. And now that, again, it's a pandemic, so a lot of people are home. A lot of people aren't worrying about what they're wearing per se. They might just want to look nice for in the house, a nice cozy vibe. She was able to provide that for her clients and her customers. And that became her best seller. So again, you never know what's out there. You never know who's going to want what you're selling. I always commend the Hometown Heroes because they go out on faith and data, and they really just put their idea to the test, and they see if it fails, if it's going to hit or miss. And Kumsi definitely hit. She definitely sold out. And, they're the customer favorites. Some of the older collections that she's had, she's reinvented them with tie-dye. I'm not sure if you're noticing that trend as well. Tie-dye is definitely making a comeback. So she reinvented some of her collections, giving the tie-dye vibe. And she paid attention to the loungewear trends in the industry and in the pandemic. A lot of people, have been depressed because they're losing jobs and they just want to be home and they want to be comfortable. A lot of people have no choice but to be home, so they might not be depressed, but they might just be home. Some people are scared to leave the home because of the pandemic. And being comfortable in your home there's no greater feeling than being in a nice, you just got off work. You might have just clocked out from your work from home job, hopped in the shower, just kind of watched the day off. You slide on your pair of favorite little cozy socks, your favorite sweatsuit, or your favorite, lounge dress, whatever your preference, and you just chill, maybe watch a movie or something like that, chill with your family. Paying attention to that loungewear industry is very important during this time, and I want to say that Jenny Lee definitely did that. Just creating that, it's almost like there's power in simplicity and being calm, but having it be your favorite is something that I think a lot of brands are paying attention to. Like, people want something that's chill, but something that stands out at the same time. So I commend her with the luxury socks. I think that's a very dope business concept. And I'm very excited to see how that continues to grow over time, okay? And let's get into our hometown hero number 2. So I'm not sure if you've been paying attention, but there's this crazy wave going on where everyone's getting back into skating. People are really looking to get more into those physical activities. Remember, we talked about it in our previous episode that recreation industry is seeing some spikes again. And there's one young lady who decided to make her own roller skate brand. So if you skate, there's inline skates and there's quad skates. She specializes in the quad skate. She's only 25, and she is located in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And she decided to share her love and passion for skating with others. So shout out to Adrienne Cooper. Again, that's in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And she's the founder of Moonlight Roller Skates. And again, it started out as a hobby. She just loved to skate. And it was, I want to say, a few years prior to the pandemic. She really, really grew her love of skating in the skate community. And she decided to start her own brand. And it became a very fast-selling brand. I watched this in real time. I was looking for a pair of skates, and I was looking around to see if there was any black-owned skate companies. I was also looking around to see if there was any women-led skate companies and people of color-led skate companies who made skates. Just looking to support the little guy in different niches and different areas. and I came across her skates, but they were all sold out. And I was trying to figure out why. I did my research and figured she had some pretty cool looking skates, some shiny, some hieroglyphic. I believe she had some snakeskin skates. I was more so looking for a classic black, so I didn't feel too bad that she was sold out for me personally, because, you know, she just didn't have the calm skates that I was looking for. But she has some pretty funky skates, and clearly other customers thought so as well, because every time I went to go check the site for friends and things of that nature, she was sold out. So I thought that was pretty cool, especially because she's so young, just 25, you know, and she has a booming business. Now, the pandemic hit, so, you know, those roller skating rinks, they weren't open like they used to be, and you know, she had to cancel some events, but by canceling some events, that didn't stop anyone from wanting to do their own personal type of skating. So there were TikTok videos being done. There are a lot of reels being done, a lot of Insta stories being done, people playing their favorite songs and rocking her skates and tagging her. So she went from being just a fast selling brand to a viral brand. And a lot of people begin paying attention and staying aware of that. So shout out to Adrian in Chattanooga. I think what she's doing is pretty dope. Again, shout out to Jenny Lee. And I'm sorry I forgot to mention, the socks are specially crafted in Italy. So that's where that brand is based. So we have a little global hometown hero today. I think Hometown Heroes is my favorite portion of the show because, again, it really highlights some real live people. You know, this goes beyond the stat books, beyond the data, beyond the statistics, beyond us being able to just read business news and read the data and understand it and regurgitate it. These hometown heroes really walk the walk, really talk the talk. They have mastered some type of, sales pitch, their sales point, their product placement. It was perfect time, perfect place. They just have a way of, vibing with their community. And, like Adrian with the skates, she really threw herself into the skate community and really found the need and found her niche. And Jenny Lee did the same as well with those cozy socks, really understanding we're in the pandemic. A lot of people just want to chill and be comfortable. They really understood that and they marketed from there and it worked. So shout out to them. And that wraps up our episode for today. I hope you enjoyed it. And again, it's your girl Moriah. Thank you so much for tuning into today's episode. Please make sure you follow us on Twitter. We're constantly tweeting different industry trends, different things that we think you should be made aware of, constantly talking about stocks, monitoring the pandemic and all of the regulations, because business can only go but so far if we're being, slightly controlled from outside influences. So again, thank you for listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Leave your review. We'd appreciate it. All right. Thanks. Peace.
You've been listening to the GSMC Business News Podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type GSMC into your favorite podcast app to find all of the shows from the GSMC Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, from business news to weird news. Please subscribe to the podcast and follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's podcast.